The Japanese Grand Prix is the 16th of 18 races this season. Lewis Hamilton and Felipe Massa are the main title contenders, with BMW's Robert Kubica hanging on to faint championship hopes. Last time out, the night race of Singapore was an absolute thriller, but pit stop nightmares for Ferrari means that Hamilton arrives here with a 7-point advantage. To Hamilton, he's up for the World Championship. Can't afford to take a risk. He's got a third place in his pocket.
Oh no, that's a big mistake, and that is the race leader, Felipe Massa, who has made a catastrophic mistake here in Singapore. Robert Kubica, he's driving brilliantly in that BMW Sauber. The final act of this World Championship is going to be spellbinding.
The late, great James Hunt won his Formula One World Championship here in 1976 and the race itself in 77. 30 years later, now owned by Toyota, the track was totally revamped for last year's epic race won by Lewis Hamilton. Welcome to the qualifying show. Steve Ryder is away doing football business for ITV, the live England match. More details of that later on. So you're going to be hearing and seeing quite a bit of me this weekend, unfortunately. A man you'll recognise is my wingman and former teammate here, Mark Blundell, Mr. Shirt himself. Do not adjust your screens, this is not a test card. Mark, the Fuji Speedway racetrack, what do you think of it?
I think it's a good circuit. I think it's a challenge for the drivers, bit of a compromise low on setup. We've got a long straight, 200 miles an hour for the guys, but then at the same time they've got to go around on the back part of the circuit with some slow speed corners. Saying that, one corner in particular, 150 miles an hour, very challenging.
Well, a wet practice this morning and the track still a little damp.
Yeah, a little bit damp, and I think that's still going to be there for when they roll out of the pit lane. But, you know, most of the guys are going to have to get out there and bank a lap early anyway. But, you know, what we're all looking for is to see who's going to get this front row position. 3 races to go, 30 points on the table, 7 ahead for Hamilton. He can't win it here. He can't win it, but he can secure it more or less. I think if he goes out and collects the 10 points, that's really going to give him the confidence to finish this season off and take a little bit more pressure out of the system. But the pressure's definitely on Massa.
Well, we saw last year just how bad the weather conditions can be here. They are vital. Ted Kravitz has an update for us.
Yes, Martin, and as you can see in the background, a little cloud still around, but the rain front has actually moved on. So the weather guys here are only saying there's a 10% chance of rain during the session. Let's have a quick word with Martin Whitmarsh from McLaren. Your guys didn't do very many laps this morning. Why was that?
No, I think both the cars were good. We had Heikki out initially on the extreme wet and he was competitive. Lewis went out, he was on the intermediate or the standard wet and he was competitive. We've got a limited number of tyres. We just didn't want to burn through those tyres. You never know what's going to happen here at Fuji.
Okay, Martin, have a good session, and I think we can confirm that there will be very little chance of rain during qualifying.
Thanks, Ted, for the latest weather report. Let's take a look at the track. Fuji Speedway, 2.8 miles, 10 right-hand corners and 6 left-handers. 78 seconds is a good dry lap time. In the shadow of Mount Fuji, a spectacular sight. It's 20 years since I clinched the Sports Car World Championship here at Fuji Speedway for Jaguar. I don't recognise a single square metre of the place though, but one feature remains, and that's the very long pit straight, one of the longest in Formula One. So 195 miles an hour then, heading into the downhill braking zone for the first corner. It's a tight right-hander, just 60 miles an hour. Turn 2 in the far distance there is an easily flat-out right-hand kink, in the dry anyway. Now, the drivers pretty much say together that it's difficult to find an advantage over your competitors around this track. It's smooth, it's wide, it's relatively straightforward. So it's down here at corners like Turn 3 where they try to steal an advantage. Arrive at 175 miles side if you get it wrong, and they quite often do. So it's here that they take the risk to try to find a tenth or two per lap.
It's a very strange circuit. You know, there's a lot of late apexes on the corners and there's a lot of off-cambers on the exit. So yeah, everywhere is tough. The straight's great though, you get a nice rest, cup of tea, except for when it rains, because when it rains it's pretty scary.
It's not really a very difficult track as such. Tricky corner, I'm not sure. There's probably not one specific one. Although you'd say the last part, because there's a lot of blind corners. To get the lines right in those corners, that's probably the most difficult part.
Basically, the characteristic of Sector 2 and Sector 3 is very different. Sector 2 is obviously very quick path with a change of direction, but Sector 3 is very slow and long.
Turn 4-5 looks quite interesting. The long right-hander looks really tricky with braking into turn 6. And the last sector as well, a lot of blind corners, up and downhill, and last corner as well, really important for the long straight. So I think it's tricky to find the right mix in terms of straight line speed and enough downforce for the last sector.
Ferrari have had the speed this year, but they've also had some awful pit stops. Their confidence must be low. The pressure is on. It's all about lights and lollipops. The championship positions have been affected. Ted looks at the facts.
With 3 races to go, Lewis Hamilton extends his lead in the championship to 7 points over Felipe Massa, who, along with Robert Kubica and Kimi Raikkonen, scored no points in Singapore, allowing Heidfeld and Kovalainen to close the gap on 4th. Singapore also saw Ferrari lose the lead of the Constructors' Championship to McLaren for the first time since Bahrain in April. BMW are close behind. But for Ferrari, this may be the image that defines their championship. Felipe Massa lost a probable 10 points because of human error. Chief mechanic Francesco Uguzzoni gave Massa the green light by mistake, but it was also Ferrari's fault for changing the procedure. Normally, as soon as the fuel rig comes off, the green light is automatically shown and the driver goes. But because the pit lane was busy due to the safety car, Ferrari put the system into manual mode, which gave Uguzzoni control over the lights. So here it is as we see it in slow motion. Watch out for Uguzzoni. He lifts his thumb, releasing the master control button, giving Massa the green light. Uguzzoni realizes his mistake and turns the light back to red, but it's too late. In his defense, Uguzzoni is not used to using the button to turn the light green. That's usually automatic. His job is to check if the pit lane is clear. On this onboard shot, we see him looking down the pit lane to check for other cars. As soon as the Honda passes, he lifts his thumb instinctively, but he's forgotten that he also has to check if the fuel man has finished his job. Understandably, Uguzzoni was inconsolable after the race. Here in Fuji, Ferrari have gone back to basics and returned to the more physical reminder of the lollipop. But just as Ferrari, who have 2 years' experience of using the traffic light system, decide it's not worth the risk and drop it, Honda introduced their own version. The Honda system should prevent incidents like Massa's happening with fail-safe systems and could save them a few tenths. But as their cars are nearly 2 seconds a lap off the pace, Honda might conclude that they've got bigger fish to fry. Back at Ferrari, Raikkonen's defence of his title ended in the Singapore wall, and you can tell he's lukewarm about helping Massa win the championship.
I know what they expect from me, so I mean, he needs to win it from himself, really. Okay, I can probably help on some areas, but it's not easy to say that you do this or you do that. It's up to him to get in the first place in the right position, and then if something can be done, probably it will be.
We are 7 points behind. We still have chance, for sure. A little bit less than we supposed to have, but we still have a lot of chance, and that's the most important thing. Sometimes these things can happen. Unfortunately, it happened so many times this season, which we lost important points. But as I said, we are a team, and we are working strongly and very, very hard to try to win again and try to win the championship.
Try to win the championship, but Kimi Raikkonen says he's got to go and win it for himself primarily.
You know what teammates are like. Me and you were teammates. I don't remember you doing me any favours whatsoever, but no, you know, serious stuff. Raikkonen's not going to do the job for Massa. Massa's got to go and win the races. He's got to make sure he gets the 10 points. If Raikkonen can help along the way, sure he will, but I think you'll find Kimi Raikkonen's trying to win races himself. He wants to get back to those winning ways.
Well, Massa is 11-4 up in qualifying over Raikkonen, so he's had the qualifying speed. He's led 300 laps of the races this year, so he's on form. He's fast enough to take it for himself, but he's going to need Raikkonen as a rear gunner to take points off Hamilton.
Yeah, he is, but you know what it's like with Grand Prix drivers, are always instinctive to try and get across the line first, and I think that's what both of them will do. But saying that Ferrari would have put into the system, you've got to help our guy. He's in the best position to win the championship if you can, and that's the big question mark, if you can.
Well, all of the teams are capable of making mistakes. McLaren, though, say that they're really together at the moment. They're on great form. Louise has taken a look at their recent form on the racetrack and talked to a slightly spiky Lewis Hamilton.
Lewis Hamilton is chasing down Felipe Massa. Here he goes down the inside, but Massa comes across and goes defensive. Hamilton squeezes him out. A fantastic and very bold pass.
Lewis Hamilton has earned himself a reputation as a hard charger, a racer who's not frightened of pulling a move on anybody. In Singapore, he had to make his way through the field after the safety car and battled for 22 laps to find a way past David Coulthard. After his final stop, though, McLaren changed tactics. Second place was within his sights, but Hamilton never made the move on Rosberg. Instead, he backed off, turned the revs down and settled for third. It's a sensible strategy, but it clearly doesn't sit well with Lewis's racer's instinct.
Everyone seems to think that I'm a big bailer out and I give up, you know. In the last race, I spent 20 laps behind David, and it was so dangerous behind him. I knew I couldn't overtake, and I knew that Nico was faster than David, so trying to overtake him would have been very risky. And I think in that situation, I just had to weigh up the odds, you know. I may have got close and done a silly dive and crashed with him and lost the points. It would have been stupid.
We've been tactically racing for a few races now. You know, we're very keen to win the World Championship, and we can't afford to make any mistakes. You know. Mistakes always cost us in McLaren, so we are very careful about how we go motor racing at the moment.
Generally, I don't drive conservative. I always push. I think perhaps it's a new skill of mine, and just makes me stronger to be able to analyse and judge when I need to be cautious and take necessary action.
And at what point during the weekend do you make the decision about whether you're going to be really aggressive or whether you're going to be a bit conservative?
Well, we're absolutely aggressive going into qualifying, and then we take great care in the opening laps. You know, it's so expensive to clip a front wing or damage a tyre or something, so you know, we are very careful in the opening laps, and then we push hard and we moderate based on what our competition is doing, and we really only got one car that we're competing against, and that's how we race.
I'm still racing. I'm here to win still, and I'll just take the necessary precautions to make sure that you know, we don't make any silly mistakes. Having experienced last year, I know what I need to do. And now it's just a question of me going and doing my job. If I don't do my job, then I'll lose. But if I do my job properly, then that should be okay.
Well, I'm joined now by McLaren tester Pedro de la Rosa. Pedro, Lewis seems to be struggling a bit with the concept of being conservative. His head tells him it's the right thing to do, but he just wants to go for every overtaking opportunity. Can you understand that dilemma?
Yeah, of course, because I know Luis pretty well. I've been testing. I know how he races, how he approaches every day he sits in the car, and his philosophy about motor racing is just whenever you sit in the car, just give 100%. It doesn't matter if you're in qualifying, you're in the race, or you're in Jerez testing during December. You know, he always gives 100%. That's the way he's been handling motor racing since he was karting, and that's why it's so difficult for him to accept that sometimes to win you just need not to push, and you have to win by the smallest margin. But that's great to see, no, in a driver that spirit is always there, and he's a natural born killer in the way that he likes to win every race.
Pedro de la Rosa did a great job when he stepped in the place of Montoya at McLaren in 2006. How do you think he's viewing Kovalainen's performances at the moment?
I think there'd be an air of frustration from De La Rosa, because I think he knows that probably if he was in the car that he'd be able to do as good, if not better, a job in some ways, because he knows the team very well, and his pace has always been very strong in testing. But you know, you've got to say Kovalainen has been good in qualifying on many occasions, but his race pace, Martin, has been a little bit weak compared to Lewis, and that's been critical.
Why do you think that is? Is it just a confidence issue?
I don't know. I'm not too sure. I think he's definitely got a lot of talent, Kovalainen. He's proven that already, but when it comes to the race, he's just a few tenths of a second away every lap from Lewis Hamilton, and that's been very costly, and he's really been, you know, struggling to get a big result when it's needed.
Well, Kovalainen had a magnificent drive here for Renault last year, so maybe this is his chance to rebuild his confidence. We're going to take a break now. We'll be back very shortly. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Fuji. Well, down here in the pit lane, the spring is back in the step of the guys at the Renault team after Alonso's victory in Singapore. It was Renault's first win since the 2006 Japanese Grand Prix, and it brings to an end the team's longest ever barren spell. The Singapore Grand Prix definitely added some spice to the Formula One pot. The sport's first ever night race not only looked stunning, it also provided drama and spectacle throughout the grid. For Fernando Alonso, that drama began on Saturday afternoon. He stopped out on track halfway through qualifying. His frustration was exacerbated by the promise that the car had shown since arriving in Singapore. But instead of starting near the front of the grid as he'd expected, Fernando was relegated to a lowly 15th on the grid. But his luck turned on Sunday afternoon, and ironically it was teammate Nelson Piquet's misfortune that catapulted the Spaniard into an early lead. Alonso had already pitted when the safety car came out on track after Piquet's accident and now found himself in genuine contention for a victory for the first time this season. It was an opportunity he grasped with both hands. Cue trademark celebrations from Fernando and jubilation amongst his team.
Definitely it was a big boost for the team. Mechanics, for me, everyone is now very confident compared to Singapore, before Singapore. I think the people believe in themselves now. They are happy. I spoke with some members of the team. They are happy to be in the factory, work hard, because they know that with a little bit more speed we can win more races.
So we can expect to see a Renault driver on the top step again then?
We changed not many things in the car, and suddenly we were competitive. So maybe that track was good for our car, our setup, and we've been competitive. But obviously I think to repeat that or to be in the podium in the remaining races will be extremely difficult as it was before.
We're still all waiting to find out what your plans are for 2009. How much of an impact will the victory have on your decision?
No, not much.
Well, Renault's technical director, Pat Simmons, is with me now. Pat, Fernando says his win in Singapore isn't going to have much influence on the decision as to whether he stays with the team or not. So what will?
Well, I think, at the beginning of the season, I always say don't judge things on the sample of one. I'd still say the same. It was a great win in Singapore, but probably more significant was the fact the car was quick. And it shows the continual improvement. And I think that's the answer. That's what he's looking for, is the car to continually improve.
That victory gave you a 5-point lead over your closest competitor, Toyota, in the championship. But how confident are you that you can keep that up? Because they're pretty quick here this weekend, aren't they?
Yeah, it's hard, but we've taken 15 points off them in the last 3 races. We are outperforming them, but they are quick. They're a good competitor, and there's not a lot of time left, so it's going to be tight right to the finish.
Take a punt on your chances for qualifying this afternoon.
I think pretty good. I was happy with the car yesterday. Difficult in the wet this morning, but it looks like it's going to be dry now, so quite confident again.
Thanks, Pat.
Pleasure.
Fernando Alonso, double world champion, could have won it again last year. How do you rate him out there at the moment against Hamilton and co?
I rate him very highly. I think he's probably the best all-round driver as of today. The only thing I would say is it's outside of the car, outside of the cockpit, he can be a little bit difficult. And I think that's some of the problem that some of the teams have looked at. I'm sure Ferrari looked at him, and I'm sure they saw a great driver and a double world champion, as you say, but they weren't quite sure what he was going to be like to work with, and that's a big problem.
I agree with you. I actually think he's the most complete package out there, but he hasn't got a drive at the moment for next year. Confirmed, we think he's going to stay, of course, with Renault, but why didn't Ferrari take him and drop Raikkonen?
That's an interesting question, and I'm not too sure what the answer to that would be, but you've got to be thinking now that Alonso's saying, OK, Renault look like they're going to get a little bit of advantage coming back to him on the engine front. We've been told now that there's going to be a bit more parity. That's got to have some influence in where he goes, and for sure I think he'll stay here.
Yeah, that's an interesting point, engine parity. Well, one team that do appear to have a very strong engine is BMW, and Robert Kubica has been making very good use of it this season, especially with his victory in Canada. Ted caught up with him and heard about another passion that he has.
The news that Canada has been dropped from the F1 calendar has been particularly disappointing for this year's winner, Robert Kubica. But he'll be cheered up by his performance in last week's European 10-pin bowling event in Vienna, where Robert finished 60th out of over 300 entrants. He even sees 1 or 2 parallels between F1 and bowling.
Bowling game, it lasts much shorter than Formula 1 race, and you have many breaks, but when you have to do it, you have to be concentrated, and you have to be really precise, even more in bowling than in Formula 1 car. So for sure you have to look for your lane, you know, and for your line, perfect line, which is similar when you approach the corner, but there you have to throw the ball into exact place and the exact point where you want to hook and where it has to end up. So there are some similarities, but of course it's completely different.
BMW have agreed a new contract with Kubica for next year, but he remains linked with a longer-term move to Ferrari or McLaren in place of Raikkonen, Massa or Kovalainen.
We will see what the future will bring. For now, in next season we will stay, me and Nick, so I think continuity is very good. The next season is the one which BMW wants to fight for the championship, so let's see, let's hope.
Prior to Singapore, Kubica was still in championship contention thanks to the most consistent point-scoring record of any driver, bagging the points in 13 out of 15 races. But he's now fallen back and is 20 points behind Lewis Hamilton.
Now I think I have to concentrate more on keeping third, which will be already good to finish on the podium in the driver's standing in the end of the season. But Kimi is behind me 7 points, and for sure he will fight for good points as Ferrari is in the fight for the title, so it will be quite difficult.
Well, Robert, talking about chances in the championship, and here with the team boss, Mario Tyson, are you on track to challenge for the championship with Robert and Nick next year?
I hope so. I mean, next year is a completely new game. Regulations change in 3 ways. Totally different aero package, the curse system, and then slick tires again. So we are really pushing hard. We have started way earlier than usually to design and develop the new car. And, well, I'm confident, but I don't know what the others do.
Okay, Robert was fastest in this morning's practice. Track's drying out nicely now. What are your hopes for qualifying?
I think we should be stronger in the dry. To see Robert topping the times in the morning was quite nice, but mainly related to the fact that he was out in the final minutes when the track was drying already. I think it's good for the first time to see a dry competition here in Fuji.
Okay, good luck, Mario. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, BMW just 15 points behind McLaren in the World Championship and 14 behind Ferrari. That's a pretty amazing performance this year, isn't it?
I think it's been a great performance by BMW. You know, they're looking towards the future. Kubica has been vocal about that. He felt that they should have been stronger in looking after their 2008 package and progressing it, and maybe feeling that he had a chance to go at this championship. But the team have taken a different view. They've also just named Nick Heidfeld as staying on for 2009, so consistency in the team.
Yes, well, along with Hamilton and Vettel, Kubica surely one of the big stars of the future long term.
Yeah, he's a great star, and you know, he's already proved his talent with winning a Grand Prix in Montreal. I think he's got great potential. So whether BMW can deliver a car that's Grand Prix winning machinery, and that's the big question mark now. You know, great heritage of BMW, but 2009 regulations, biggest change in probably 20 years, so big question marks for all the teams down the pit lane.
Well, I've got to get up to the commentary box now to do my day job. What do you do during this period, Mark?
Well, you don't like my shirt, so I'm going back to wardrobe to change it.
I do love your shirt. Well, there's a competition still to come and plenty more action in the show. David Coulthard has announced that he's stepping down at the end of the year, retiring from driving Formula One cars. Louise has caught up with him to hear about his views of his long career. This week, it's about his years at Red Bull.
You couldn't really get more polar opposite in terms of the character of the team between McLaren and Red Bull. Do you think you benefited from any way from that sort of change?
You know, that journey for me has been fantastic because I've been more involved in helping shape the team in the early stages, you know, help encourage certain people to come to the team. And obviously in a young team principal like Christian Horner, then it was a complete fresh start for the team. You know, he had no baggage associated with Formula One. And, you know, I think that everyone would acknowledge that the team is now seen as a serious player in the Formula One paddock. Obviously, big step to go to where McLaren and Ferrari are, but they've been at it for a couple of other decades beyond Red Bull. So, you know, I'm absolutely sure that with sustained investment and the same commitment, the team will continue to grow.
They do have a lighter side, though. I can't think of any other team that would dress their driver up as Superman to put him on the podium at Monaco.
Yeah, no, that was fantastic, actually. I've got that the cape back at home, and I was looking at it last night. And at the time, I remember one journalist after the race saying I looked like a tit standing on the podium. And I remember Michael and Rubens and Ross Brawn being on the podium in Malaysia with these yellow wigs on. Now, you know, I think they look more like tits than I did with the Superman cape. And there was lots of little kiddies came to me afterwards and, you know, who actually thought that was a kind of Superman come racing driver on the podium. So I think it was a light-hearted side to Formula One.
Tell me about the decision to retire. Was it one particular thing that swayed your mind, or was it just a gradual feeling that crept up on you?
Yeah, it was a growing feeling. You know, I'm a realist, so I realised after starting my 15th season in Formula One at 37 years old, I was always going to be closer to the end than the beginning. As the season was progressing, I realised that the energy and enthusiasm that would be needed to continue into another changing Formula One, going next year to slick tyres, care systems, all of those sorts of things, it would just be the right time. And the fact that that wasn't fought within the team would confirm that they felt it was the right time as well. And I just look back on these 4 years as being a very positive part of my career. And clearly I must be doing something right within Red Bull. The fact that Mr. Mateschitz is happy for me to continue as a consultant going into next season. They see a value, they see a genuine desire from my side to work whatever hours it takes to try and see this team be a successful team in the future. And of course it's a bit of a roller coaster ride in any Grand Prix team's career to actually achieving that success, but we seem to have levelled a little bit as we speak towards the end of the season. But we're still battling it out with some major manufacturers, and as I said earlier, we're, I think, seen as a serious team in the paddock now.
To catch up with all the latest Formula One news and watch extended video features, don't forget to visit the ITV Formula One website. That's also the place where you can find further details on our competitions. This weekend, we're giving you the chance to win a VIP trip for two to the 2009 Santander British Grand Prix on the 20th and 21st of June, where you'll watch all the action just feet away from Beckett's Corner. You'll be given a pair of VIP Santander and Abbey club tickets for both qualifying and race day, where you can enjoy gourmet lunch, unlimited champagne and VIP guest appearances while enjoying the best view of the circuit. You'll also have transport to Silverstone from anywhere in the UK and accommodation on Saturday night. Over to you, Lewis.
To be in with a chance of winning this great prize, courtesy of Santander and Abbey, just answer this question correctly. Who won last year's Japanese Grand Prix? Is it A, David Coulthard, B, Jenson Button, or C, me, Lewis Hamilton?
To enter, call 09049 596789. Calls cost £1 from a BT landline. Calls from other networks may be higher, and from mobiles will be considerably more. Or text the word F1 and your answer A, B or C to 63337. Text costs £1 plus one standard network rate message. Digital, satellite and cable viewers can enter by pressing their red button now. You can also enter for free at itv.com until 5 p.m. on Friday the 17th of October. Entrance must be 18 or over, and lines close at 5 p.m. on Tuesday the 14th of October. Entries made after closing time won't be counted but may still be charged. We'll be back with all the qualifying action from the Fuji Speedway after this break.